Yeah, we're live. How is everybody doing? It is, I don't know, 7-ish or so. Tonight we're going to talk about the 3800 Series 2 and Series 3, because as it turns out, my Series 2 was not in good enough shape to run. It had several, I'm thinking at least 3, possibly 4, cylinders that were just not cooperating. And so I went to, we were trying to get it done because we're trying to film doing some Engine Master stuff next week. And we wanted to run some V6 stuff. So I decided that I was going to make that happen. So we got everything ready to get the 3800 done. And lo and behold, it was not to be. And that's all my fault for not doing. I've had this motor for quite a while, and I never did a leak down test on it to make sure that the motor that we were putting all this time in trying to get it to like actually fire, mostly with the ignition system getting it hooked up to be able to run the Holly, that I never did a leak down test on it. So preparation and organization, obviously the key to success. It's very important to do that stuff ahead of time, not right before you're trying to put the motor on the dyno, because nothing good ever comes when you do that. So because that was bad, what we did was rush over to the local auto parts store, and I was trying to find a Hemi as well. That was my mic. Fancy. That was the boom mic. So we tried to find another one. I tried to find a Hemi first, and we couldn't find that because that was broken as well. And so we did found a couple of V6s, and the one that I found was actually a Series 3. So it was an what is that? An L32, I think, instead of the L67. So a Series 3 with the better blower, and it's rated at more power. There were supposed to be upgrades on it too. I haven't read the whole thing on what it is, but we just knew that we had that one and we wanted it, and we were going to get it on the dyno and make it run. So lo and behold, and we'll take a walk in there now, we can see it. We actually last night, thanks to Ish and Eric from West Tech, and help from you guys, somebody sent me the information on how they had theirs running on Holly, and I gave that to Ish and Eric, and so they could take a look at it and go, oh yeah, look, that might work. It's just using the 3-pulse. And so they figured out how to wire it, and here it is up on the dyno. And last night they did a systems check. Basically last night they were able to make the thing come to life. We didn't even have the fuel or anything hooked up. We just used brake clean, but we knew that we had spark because we were seeing RPM. So once we had spark, you just add a little fuel in there, and it roared to life for its first time. And hasn't done well since, unfortunately. It turns out that, and I made a few pulls on this thing. I made a few runs on it, and I was just starting to tune it, but unfortunately, it was not making very much power. I'll go ahead and we'll walk in there, and I'll show you some of the dyno results. I'm doing a whole video on our little adventure because we had to take this thing back apart, and Troy and I have spent all day today doing this, trying to get it ready for testing, or which starts with filming and stuff, which starts tomorrow. Unfortunately, this thing does not want to cooperate. So again, another leak down and compression test. And the interesting thing is I did a compression test on it right after we put it on, and most of the cylinders are like in the 155, 160 range. One of them was down to 125, and I thought, oh, you know what, for what we're doing, that's probably good enough. But then when you do a leak down on it, it shows compression during the cranking compression test. But when you do a leak down on it, not so much. It has about 90% leak down. So we actually took the blower off and took the exhaust manifolds off and stuff, and we unbolted the rockers, and then we did our leak down test again, so we could find out kind of where it's coming from. So we were listening, and it seemed like it was coming out the intake. We can feel it actually coming out the intake side. So I thought, okay, well, that's actually kind of good news, because that means that hopefully not that a valve is bent, which is certainly a possibility, but that maybe the valve is just not sealed up and not seating, and that might be something that we can fix, which would be cool. So we took the head off and did a Ritchie razor blade rebuild, which I thought was going to work miraculously, and I was going to cure everything. and it was going to be fantastic, and it was going to be nothing but the wind. So we took the thing apart, and we did the, cleaned off all the stuff with the razor blade. The biggest part about the razor blade rebuild actually is that you take the valves out, and then we use a drill motor, and or actually a cordless drill, Makita, and then we use lapping compound, and then reseat the valves, because all the valves, especially the exhaust, had pitting on them. On that particular cylinder, it was leaking out the intake way more than the exhaust. So we did all of them. We cleaned them off, and then we relapped them all. And then before we did that, when we had the head on the bench over here, we checked them. We poured gas in it to see if it was leaking, and it definitely was. So I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. It's not good. And then we took them apart. We're like, oh yeah, those things could definitely use a valve job. But for our needs, we can do a quickie valve job using a drill and lapping compound. Show you our little test facility over here. So this is where we were doing. So we were just using, valve grinding compound and valve lapping compound. You can use also our fluid. These are Hemi heads. Those are just sitting there right now. So we went ahead and lapped the valves in, cleaned them, lapped them, put it all back together, and then I retested it right there on our test fixture, meaning I just poured fluid in them to see if they leaked, and they did not. I thought, okay, this is going to be awesome. So Troy and I went and put the cylinder head back on. He had to go get a new head gasket. That was a little adventure also. We put it back on and put the blower and all that stuff back on, and then retested it. And then one of the other cylinders was low and leaking out the exhaust. So now I'm wondering if my Richie rebuild, if lapping the valves, although if you take a look at the contact pattern, which is normally what you do when you're doing a valve job or even lapping the valves, the contact pattern after we did it was fantastic. There was contact all the way through, all the way around. It was concentric. It wasn't on some of the exhaust valves. It wasn't ideal. I only did 3 of them. It wasn't ideal. It was smaller than I would like to see, but it was much better than it was obviously before we did it. So I thought this is going to work out really good. So we put it back on. I started back up and ran it, and now it's way down on power. So maybe all of the hype for the razor blade rebuild is not working out. I actually think that that's not what it is. I kind of think it's something else, but we'll have to see. So right now I have 0. That's just not good lighting. We're gonna have to go over this way. So that's better. So right now I have no 3800s that make any power. I mean, this one made okay power. When I first started it, it was being like, the load-in torque was like 275 or something, but it only got up to about 255 horsepower or so. And the boost was down. It was only making about, I don't know, 5 pounds or something like that. And we tried playing with, adjusting the air, fuel, and timing is very simple, because all we have to do is add or subtract and add or subtract. And it just was not responding the way that it should to the changes that we were making. So I thought, well, this thing, given the power that it's making, it seems like it's down a hole. I would expect this thing's rated at 270. I've run one of these on the engine dyno before, although it was a Series 2, but still, it's going to make, like, this thing rated at 270 with an open exhaust the way that we have it. We are running the accessories and the factory water pump, but it should make 300. I was thinking somewhere near there, and it was not doing that. And the torque and the horsepower are going to be fairly close to even, I think, on this combination. And it should be, I think, making about 8 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember right. I didn't have a lot of experience with this is a 2004 3800. I don't have a lot of experience with the later ones, but this thing should be making more than it was. So we went out and checked it. There's no sense in tuning it or playing with it when it's unhappy. So as I said, we went through this procedure with the cylinder head, and now it's making even less power. So apparently I can tune all the power right out of it, which is, not something to be proud of. So I'm trying to figure out a way to fix that. And then our idea was that, okay, maybe on the other V6, on the Series 2, we can take one of the heads off of that one and put a good head on it if we have a good head, but we have bad holes on both sides of that motor. The other thing I don't know, maybe if you guys know, are the Series 2 and Series 3 heads the same? Can they interchange? Somebody let me know. I don't know. I haven't taken a look and measured them exactly. I don't know if the pushrod length is exactly the same, and if the rocker position is exactly the same, and if the guide plate and all that stuff that lines up is exactly the same. If it is, it would be a nice, easy swap. Again, assuming that we had a good cylinder head, which on these two motors, it doesn't seem like we do. Saul, what's up? Hello, Master. Can I run a 302 Windsor 11-to-1 compression, twin screw supercharger at 7 to 8 pounds on 110 octane? Yes, you can. Should I be worried about knock? You're going to have to still be mindful of the timing that you run. But on 110, it would be even better if you ran it on E85 if you have that. Because then you would add power from the E85, and both the high compression and the boost, and especially the combination of those two things, would really like that. That would be an ideal candidate for E85. Let's see, Goodfellows, you need to let me port one of the sets of heads, and you'll be amazed on the knowledge I gathered through the years. I'm all for somebody porting these heads. We want to do that test on a 3800. Can you do a Coyote versus a 5.4 double overhead cam? Like a Coyote versus like a Shelby? Why doesn't the 4.6 mod motor get any love? Have you taken a look at all the 4.6 mod motor videos that I have up? Okay, what else have we got going on? We'll get down to some questions. I think the head swaps and they can use the same gaskets and bolt pattern, but the short block is a bundle of snakes. Dump a can of Restore in it. I don't think it's coming back. I'm actually a little confused on what happened here. Because judging by what we saw when the head was off, this shouldn't happen. I expected this thing to be, actually what I expected is it to be in between where we were and where it should be. I think that there's still a little bit of nonsense going on with the cylinder head, and obviously we only did one. The other head is probably not perfect either, but I expected it to be, in the 290 to 300 range, and then good enough for us to do what we wanted to do with it. And then after that, we could fix it and put good heads on it, which I'm still going to talk. I'm going to talk to Derek at L&R and find out if he has any of these heads that are done and ready to go with valve jobs and stuff done on them already. Then we'll just do another head swap on this, and hopefully we can make it work, which would be good. I still would like to run this, and it would be great. Oh, okay. Oh, Tyler, that's right. I did read that. The intake valves are different. It's not injectors. The injectors aren't a problem. We tested those. The clock is not accurate. And we know that the Series 3 blower is better, which is I was happy about getting this one, because we can do that swap and compare those two. And did you guys get to see we converted our our drive-by-wire to manual drive-by-wire, as I often do. Noodles, I went through that on the leak down. When we first took it apart, it was leaking out of the intake, which I thought that we cured. If I get my 302 high up and stroke it out to 347. And put is 347. Put forged crank pistons, everything top of the line. 220 cc heads. The 220 cc heads are fine for a 347. We've run lots of we normally would put a 205 airflow or something like that on there, or even a 185 if we're not trying to make a ton of power. My opinion on M90 hybrid using M112 rotors. I don't know why you'd go through all the trouble of doing that when you could just do an M112. I don't know why you would machine a spacer between them and go through all of that just to put a different rotor pack in there when you already have you already have the blower that has that rotor pack in it. I don't know on the L67 versus the L32. I was told that the L32 is stronger, but I can't verify that. What changes are needed to run a GM 6.2 LSA on E85? You'd need the right injector size. You'd need a bigger pump probably. And I don't know if you're asking about fuel line and stuff. I don't know about the factory fuel line on that. Somebody might want to chime in on that. Is there a horsepower limit on the dyno? I'm thinking that they're rated around 2,000. They don't normally run them there, though. Cam recommendation, Aaron. Cam recommendation for a small block Ford 306, 11R 170s, ported RPM. RPM EFI intake. So is it an RPM 2? Turbo 12 pounds, max shift point 6,000. This is a 306. Either one of those cams would probably, depending on what turbo size you have, if you're only going to 6,000. I don't know how much power you're making. If it's less than 1,000 horsepower, probably either one of those cams are going to work. The 266 might drive a little bit better. So you think, Tim, you think the casting was the same, but they just changed the valve size? Thanks, Eric Lawrence. And so tell everybody else to leave a like as well. Dan, it's more than 1,500 on a 902 because we've made a lot more than that on this dyno. '85 Mustang GT, around 390 horsepower. Want around 650 turbo application recommendations. 600 is right in the wheelhouse of a GT45, a cheap one of those. Those are good. The spark plugs that are in the 3800 right now are stock ones. DB, a 220 airflow won't make more power than a 195 on your combination because you don't have enough motor to take advantage of it. Series 3 does have a balance shaft. Will you be installing a ZZP cam for the 3800? Will you be using 1.9 rockers? We will put springs in it. We will put cams in it. I don't know about a 1.9 rocker. Greetings, welcome. A Mercedes V8 on the dyno. That's way down the list. Just made 616 wheel horsepower the other day with my L67 Turbo Fiero, aluminum heads, ST5 cam, Holden Commodore intake, L7 math, 24 PSI, 6870 precision. E85, nice. Oh, so they went up in compression also in the L32. On your L67 Turbo Fiero, what kind of timing are you running? Did it say that you were running on E85? Yeah, E85. For my 347 cam, should I go bigger? If you want to make more power, you can. That XFI 236 cam will, with the right combination and the right heads and stuff, will push it, you know, past 450 into the on a 347 toward the 500 range. $15 degrees, okay. Can't do cam and rockers on an L67. Unity Motorsports made a video saying it's possible to machine a 7.3-liter Godzilla crank into a 6.2 Boss. It just seems like a lot of work to not get very much out of it. The distributor is fine. What you need to, on your single overhead cam 6-cylinder, the distributor is fine, but you need to make sure that you have enough spark energy for that. Casey, I saw the notification for the 300 Ford on Power Nation. I wonder where they get all their ideas. And that's a good number. So we got something to shoot for. Can you run E85 through a TBI system? You can, but it would be not very good because you can't flow very much fuel through those. So you can make even less power with the E85 because, again, you're limited in the amount of fuel flow. Let's see, you can get away with 340 low bloop with a factory 1.6 rocker before it'll hit the guide. I want to run 317 LS heads on my 408 stroker from an LQ4, changing into BTR springs. That's good. How are these compared to stock LS3 heads? They'll make quite a bit less than the LS3 heads will, but they'll work fine, especially if you're, I don't know if you're adding boost to that or not. Jeff, a B303 on a speed density car is going to be a little bit of a handful in terms of tuning. Let's see, you can turn down the LS valves a little and run them in 3800s and use LS valve springs. Okay, so you use beehive. These have beehive springs. I've already used, I know back when I did my first 3800, when we did the Series 2 stuff on the engine dyno here, I thought we used 26.918 springs in it. DB, I don't know what kind of power you're trying to make. Your cam choices is RPM and power. If you want a mild combination, you want to drive around, then you pick a cam for that. If you only care about a peak number, then you pick a cam that gives you the peak number. I can't decide that. You have to decide what it is you want from your combination. You can use my E85 tuned motor on my 99 L67, runs perfect. I don't know what that's in reference to. You also made the Series 3 supercharger. What would stop the Series 3 supercharger from bolting on to the Series 2 motor? Oh, no boost. Okay. Yeah, the LS3 head is going to make more power by quite a bit than a 317 head. Of all of the heads, the LS3 head is the most powerful factory head, and the 317 is probably the least powerful factory head. Have you figured what cam you want to use on the 3800? I'm going to use more than one, I'm thinking. So to get good spark through the distributor, you just need the right coil, and then an ignition amplifier is a good idea. The 3800s are hydraulic rollers. Yeah, Toyota V8s would be good on here. So would Nissans. I have a set of 3800 springs and head studs if you need them. I think Comp will probably send us the springs. Oh, nothing is the same bolt pattern. The heads are not, and the intake is not. Is the blower bolt pattern to the intake not the same? And seriously, it was drive-by-wire. We know that, but it's not drive-by-wire for us. It's drive-by cable. Series 2 block has shorter deck and narrower intake. Okay. You'd have Noodles. I don't know what the reasoning is behind that. I'm assuming, like most of their stuff, that it's cost, because it's not, you know, a mass air meter for emissions and drivability and stuff is really hard to beat. And maybe they figured out a way to get it done without the meter, and maybe they saved a few bucks. 3800 turbo at track days. I use some 18410 pack dual LS springs with Manley stainless LS valves. What retainers are you using with that? Cornfed, just pop in and say hi. What's up? And if you need to know anything, I'm happy to lend a hand. Can you come over and fix the cylinder heads on this motor? Gen 5 blower is very common on the Series 2. They had a Gen 3. Need to modify the PCV system and throttle body and MAF sensor and modifications. We don't care about any of that. We don't care about the MAF. We don't care about the throttle body. We don't care about the PCV either, unless it's how it plugs into the manifold. But again, that's still not. If we just have to plug it, we're okay with that too. Yeah, I'm familiar with the ZZP guys. Do you expect gifts for the dyno comparison? For which comparison are you talking about? Joyce is in the house. An LS, okay, titanium retainer and keeper. Okay. I think for this motor, what we're going to do is I'd like to do ported heads, and they don't have to be the best ported heads ever. I just want them to represent what a guy could have on his car. We're not going to go crazy on camshaft because there's no need to. The 90% rule is that most of the guys use a cam that they can put in and not have to then modify everything to accommodate the camshaft, especially if they're going to be driving around. A lot of these cars are automatics and not manuals, so that has to be given into consideration. We want to run the blower with a turbo. We want to do a compound deal. We want to run, obviously I have pulleys and stuff to run on the blower so that we can change the boost from the blower. That's all good. We probably will run water meth injection into the blower. I'm probably not going to run an intercooler. I'm not going to get a kit for that. We'll just do the water meth. And I won't try to spin the blower as absolutely as fast as it can and try to get the maximum power out of blower. You get to a point where, okay, we got good gains, we got good gains, we got good gains. Now we're starting to really not get very much. And now we're really having to fight for every like little bit that we get. And there are guys out there doing it, and their goal is different than mine. Their goal is to get I want them to have the most power that you can out of a Gen 5 blower. And that's a worthwhile goal, but that's not my goal. I'll let those guys out there do that, and they're doing a good job on that because they want to put the time and effort into that, and I can't do that. So we'll show you what a lot of things do and what the popular things are and what they do. Different kinds of cams, you know, like a stock and a mild and a wilder one. And then we'll the big thing is we want to do is turbocharge it, and then I'd like to do a big bang on one of these, but one that's working, obviously. The Firebird Camaro intake is one of the ones that I would like to run on here. Dave, you have a 3800 or something? Is that? I'm just looking back to see. You know what big bang means, right? That we blow something up. Water meth on a 2.2 with an M90. But it already has a turbo on it. Yeah, I've looked at the intense stuff too. The Big Bang K24 is still happening. Utah, take a look at the videos we did on the rear mount stuff. I did extreme rear mounts, and you don't need to do them like I did. The ones that most people are using are more like a mid mount. The Barra is sitting over in my storage next to the other Barra. So there's been no updates on that. Honda Tech's in the house. L37 with EFI elbow and some pipe before the throttle body. The intake manifold, that's the blower manifold, is not really very good. Venom Vet, the flat crank is not the reason that it runs to high RPM. There's lots of other stuff that goes into that, like the valve train. 3800 turbo track days. I've used the intense heads on our 8-second car. They work. Sounds like it. Have you ever done a centrifugal supercharger feeding a roots blower? The guys from Paxton did that, or Vortec did that long ago with they did it with the Lightning, I think. They either did it with the Lightning or the 03 Cobra. So they had their blower feeding the factory blower, and it works. It doesn't work as well as the turbo stuff does. You can port the rear-wheel drive L36 intake a lot. Would be interesting to see the comparison for the L26. I haven't watched the Power Nation video. Obviously, I've been busy thrashing. This is the first time I got to sit down all day. So boost, 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 boost. Okay, Casey, get going. How much nitrous can the L36 3800 hold? The amount of nitrous that you can safely inject into a motor is a function of the NA power output of that motor, because it can only process a certain amount. It's not that it runs out of strength or potential, because as we see from the Big Bang comparisons, I don't think you can get 1500 horsepower worth of nitrous on a motor that starts out at 500 horsepower, but you can do that with turbos. And so it's not a matter of the strength. It's a matter of the motor simply will not process that amount of nitrous. 500 horsepower from a Ford 300 is not, I mean, they do a great job. They have a really big budget, and they're good at what they do. And so that, kudos to them. That's awesome. But it's a 300-inch motor and it's making 500 horsepower. If you start at 250 and you add 14 pounds of boost, or 14 and a half pounds of boost, you're kind of there. So it's not, that shouldn't be too hard. A 236, 248 is considered a mild cam for a 408 or 427, but not so much for I don't know that you'd want to daily drive that camshaft in a 260 small block or 289 small block. Can you run high compression on supercharged engines nowadays? The same rules have always applied, whether it's then or now. Technology is a little better with knock sensors and things. It makes it more livable. The L67s are not forged like the traditional forged stuff from the aftermarket. I think that they're powdered metal rods. I don't know about the cost on a build for an L36. The L67 didn't do well with an intercooler, but did well on E85. Okay. I ran an intercooler on our L67 way back and didn't really get very good results. We were limited in the tuning that we could do. We had a Tech 2 system, I think, on it, and we struggled with that quite a bit. So I didn't really think that the data was as good as it could have been. But I was expecting something a little more elaborate, and never got it. And as a matter of fact, we didn't get big gains with almost anything that we tried. We tried headers. The one thing that always works were pulleys and having more boost, but none of the other stuff seemed to do what we thought it was, and that included the intercooler. Maybe it just needs to be flipped upside down, and you run the intercooler like the Super Coupes have. The person that gave the thumbs down might be the guy that I kicked out the other day. This is the same motor, but I don't know when they stopped the Riviera. These things originally came with a really small blower. They started out with an M62, and then they went to the M90, and then they went to this Gen 5 version. Would it be worth tuning for E85 on a stock 01 3800 Camaro? Probably not. We don't get very good gains from the NA stuff unless it's really high compression. The Coyote seems to respond very well, and the LT1 responds fairly well. The other stuff that we've seen here that we've tested didn't work very well. It didn't gain big power. Only the turbo and blower stuff seems to. The 3800 should at least make 500. I think that's pretty easy. The 2.2 500 is a much more impressive feat. Yeah, I've seen guys do. We did a compound turbo blower thing on an 03 Cobra, and so it's the same thing on the blower. I think was smaller on the Lightning. Yeah, and that's the problem with these is that, you know, without intercooling and you keep turning the boost up, these things start getting really unhappy in terms of charge temperature. In Australia, we have a plate that we direct blower air remote water to air intercooler. So it comes out of the, it has to sneak out from under the blower and go to a cooler and then go back into the intake manifold. The 4300 had a power takeoff. Oh, that's cool. Because it's probably a irrigation pump or something. Greg, I picked up an RV 440, 1976. What improvers would you toss at it? Nitrous or turbo, stock internals, a 6-pack cam, double link timing chain, improved valve springs. All of that stuff is good. The 440 suffers from a few different things. One, it has usually the pistons are way down in the hole. I think it suffers from retarded timing. It has so head flow. It has obviously mild cam timing, but also might be not accurate cam timing. And the compression is because the piston's so far down the hole is obviously not great either. The one that I ran was from Dulce or from Freiberger, and you know they were screaming boost, but the other problem is with the pistons so far down the hole, it's also kind of prone to detonation, which is not a good combination. So it makes no power, and it's and it's more likely to detonate, which is not good. The Final Roman 85 corrodes things too. My 92 Dodge Spirit 2.5 was flex fuel and had special stainless fuel parts. Okay, yeah, a lot of things are upgraded on the flex fuel stuff. The charge temp could go over 300 degrees. Yeah, we've seen stuff that's on these roots blowers that's really bad. A Grand National is a completely different motor. You're running on Scuba? You can use an air to water sandwich plate. Dustin, I've got a couple videos up. We did a 7675 on a built 3800 a few months back. Also, the Aussie manifold is modular. You can put a sandwich plate between the plenum and the runners like a Holly. Oh, okay. That's kind of cool. I'll have to take a look at that. Not really a plate, more of a intercooler. Oh, turn sideways. High charge temps decrease your detonation threshold. In regards to the Banks building a monster truck engine series, I haven't seen their monster truck stuff. Can you comment on why you wouldn't want to use a twin screw for compound charging? I would need more information on that. As a general statement, I disagree with that. I don't know why you wouldn't. If you were going to compound something, a twin screw would be more efficient than a roots blower. So that would be a step up from compounding a turbo and a roots blower. If this is about diesel stuff, then you're talking to the wrong guy. Your Chuck Norris questions. Nick's Grod uses a Dremel on sharp edges of his 440 heads combustion chambers to prevent detonation. It's a good idea. We've done that a lot. On the Engine Master stuff, we polished the chambers. I think more because it made me feel better. I didn't know that much about softening the chambers, so otherwise I definitely would have done that. I also took the pistons and polished them to a mirror finish. We did, 1,000 grit sandpaper, emery cloth, and went all the way down to where we were just using polishing compounded wax and stuff. And so they were mirror smooth, but honestly, I don't know if that did anything other than make me feel better. Is the 459 cam a daily drive cam? It is on the right displacement. I wouldn't use that cam in a 4.8, certainly as a daily driver. The intercoolers, the Lightnings have bricks underneath them, kind of, have you seen the 03 Cobra stuff? It's like that. And they're not very big. I mean, they don't have a lot of surface area. So again, they size the intercooler, one, for fitment. They have a limited amount of space because the blower can only go up so high and the whole thing can only be so wide. You have other things that are going on in there. And obviously it's size also for cost. They don't want to make it too big because there's no reason to spend too much money on each one of them. Then they have to charge more. It's also sized for the intended change in temperature that they were looking for at the given power and boost level that they were trying to do. So it's sized for its job, basically. And there's no reason to put a 1,000 horsepower core in a motor that makes, 300 horsepower. An L67 on E85 does not need an intercooler. Okay. An L67 with a turbo on E85 will definitely benefit from an intercooler. Yes, I don't know about soon, but we're doing some stuff with David. This is the other dyno cell. When are you going to turbo the Dodge Magnum? I don't know. I don't know about the time thing. $2,000 grit. We did polish it a lot. You're supposed to leave the carbon rough or the piston rough so the carbon can stick to it and raise the compression. That's right. When I cleaned the valves, I was thinking that because I cleaned the valves and then cleaned the face of the valve too, and I'm like, God, that's giving compression away. But it looked better when it was clean because I was doing a complete valve job. Yeah, the mirrored turbos are nice. The stuff from Nelson that they do is most of the stuff that he does is really impressive. On the 2.2, the TBI head has an unshrouded exhaust chamber on the turbo head. They smooth it out to prevent detonation, run Inconel valves for that. Turbo heads are marked TS for turbo shrouded. Oh, very, very cool stuff. See? Good information. Bring on the Barra. I'd like to run the Barra. I want to run the 4200 too, because now the 4200 is, I think that the 05 is together now. And so we could run that and it has ring gap in it, so we could make some good power with it. I've seen people talk about the ZZP aluminum heads, but they're just really hard to find. And I don't want to make something that, what if we just made our own billet head? But it's also something that nobody can use. So it's not really good testing. Brian would like to see the VS Racing 7875 on the 3800. We'd like to see 1,000 horsepower. 4 digits on the 3800 would be a good number to see. I don't know that it will get there given what we're starting with. Vortec 4200 L6 torque cam build for low RPM towing. It already is that. If you've looked at the variable cam timing test that we did on the 4200 on the video that's up, it has a very, very flat torque curve. It's actually all about torque. In fact, it has a very impressive curve. Let's see. The T&D shaft rockers for the Buick V6 are direct bolt-on. What does a valve job do for an 05 GTO? The right one probably could help it if you know somebody that can do that. When will you build the 2.2? Well, one of the 2.2s is already together. The other one is still in the car. Dragon, that's no, I haven't yet. CSI, Carry Studios, what's up? Did you have a question? Intense Racing has heads. They have. Do they have ported stock heads? We won't, when we do the Big Bang, we won't do a turbo and a blower, and obviously the blower is not going to get anywhere near that. We have to do, it would just be the turbo by itself blowing through one of the NA intake manifolds, hopefully a good one that will help us make power. And it would be the same thing that we do on all the Big Bang stuff. So it would be ported head, some kind of camshaft, some kind of intake upgrade, which would definitely be any kind of intake on this 3800 because it has a dedicated blower manifold, which we're going to get rid of. I'm not just going to run a box around it. That short runner intake manifold is not very good, although it will help us just limit torque production if that's what we're trying to do. The 2.2. I would love to do some more stuff on the 2.2 right now, but I'm knee deep in all these other things. I posted the question under the, what was the question? Did I miss it? Oh, here we go. You asked in an email, what engine am I working on? A 97 Gen 2 L21383, lobe separation 114, 165, need to make 1,000 horsepower. What turbo should I go with? I'm assuming that you have something in the 230 range for camshaft, I'm hoping. Even with stock heads, although I would like to see if you had ported heads would be better. But if you want to make 1,000 horsepower, you use the same 1,000 horsepower cam that we use on everything else. A Gen 2 7875 from VS Racing, an S475 on any of those that you pick, or an S480. I would pick a good sized hot side on a 383 because otherwise you're going to get to the limit of the hot side first before you get to the limit of the cold side. Because a 383 is a fairly good displacement, and you're going to be making some, if you chose your cam correctly and you have ported heads and a good intake, you're going to be making fairly good power on a 383 to start out with. Oh, okay, so it's making 560 now. You're already easily there. Yeah, so an S480 or a 7875 Gen 2 or Gen 3, but like I said, like a T6 hot side might not be a bad idea. Dustin, the shaft mounted rockers seem like they're from T&D, seem like they'd be pretty expensive. Take the blower out. We've done that on M90s before, but that, again, that just doesn't make the intake manifold. It doesn't work very well. I have used the max speeding turbos a couple of times now, and the ones that we use, we ran GT3582s, and they work good. Also, can you use billet rails for an L67? Just have to make new fuel rail mounts and stands. Injector spacing and angle is the same. Just mount to intake instead of the head. And that's the thing on these. If we put a naturally aspirated intake manifold on there, we have another set of injector rails, and then we can run dual injectors, right? 224, 236. That's a pretty small cam to be making 560 horsepower. That's pretty impressive. .500 wheel horsepower with an M90, with a Gen 5 M90. That seems like a lot. Oh, heads. Okay, that's, yeah, you're doing good. I want to see a 350 Chevy, cheap scat rods and cheap forged pistons, solid flat tappet cam, 220 heads, and a 500 nitrous shot. I don't know that that combination would take a 500 shot. I don't think that that's enough motor. Right? That's not even a 500 horsepower motor. I don't think. Have you known a 93-ish quad 4 turbo for the street? Is it worth the time and expense? Are you asking if you should put a turbo on a quad 4? The answer is obviously yes. CZP claims that their new 1.6 lightweight rockers beat the TND 1.6 roller rockers. I have both. I look at these factory rockers and they look like LS rockers. I think it would be very tough for guys to design rockers that are better than this. Although I think that these rockers are steel, aren't they? Excuse me. Yeah, I have run. The question is, have you ever run D16 engines? A lot of them. I did most of that stuff on that. Well, all of that stuff on the chassis dyno. We ran turbos on them and cams and ported heads and things. I never ran one up to. I think that the most that the guys that would come here ever ran was I want to say 350, or might have been near 400 at the tire. What size cam would work with a 96 small block Chevy Vortec head? I have LS springs off of the 243 LS head. You're still going to run into problems with the retainer to seal clearance, I think, on the Vortec head. So you're limited to, I think it's 450 or 460 lifts. You can't put very much cam in that. It's operating outside of bullets range. They said 25 to 5,700 on dyno, running 35 to 6,600, pulled to 6,800. No benefits. Bullet said I should go. See, I was thinking 230, 240 kind of cam. That camshaft, I don't know where you're making peak power at, but it will rev to 6,800 or 6,600. Did you say 6,800? But I don't, unless it has a whole lot of cylinder head on it and a very, very short runner intake. Does it have an LT1 intake on there? Because that's very, very short runner. It shouldn't be making power, peak power up. I mean, it shouldn't be making power at 6,800. You can use non-link bar LS lifters to also. Push rod flex is still an issue, but you have some clearancing. If it's 3/8, not a big deal. Are you talking about 3/8 push rods in the 3,800? The rockers are stamped steel. There's a rumor going around is that the stock rockers are 1.6, but flex to 1.7. Wouldn't that actually make them? Wouldn't that actually reduce the rocker ratio? I don't see any reason to put a 3/8 push rod in a 3800, at least not in the RPM range and spring rates that we'd be running. I'm planning on running 400 on just the turbo. Would love to see someone do some testing on some of the GMC V6s, but parts availability is a problem. Oh, the big V6s. Yeah, I thought maybe you were talking about were you talking about the Cyclones and the Typhoons, or the really big ones, like 305-inch ones? Excuse me. Dustin, are you running like a whole lot of spring rate? Our problem with the water meth injection had nothing to do with the percentage of meth that we were using. It had everything to do with the distribution in that particular intake manifold. It doesn't want to go in and have to go where all the air has to go, and having the fuel and water stay attached. When it hits things, it comes out of the suspension and then it puddles in various places. And so it all doesn't get to all of the runners evenly. That's the problem that we saw. LT1 heads ported by Elliott. Heads are running 208. Pistons are okay. Summit Racing dual plane mid-rise. A 401 GMC V6. Those are good. Oh, the 637 and 702. Those are really big. Oh, so you had XER lobes and a big lift. Okay. So how much spring rate do you have on that, Dustin? The 476. Okay, 2 more minutes. Obviously, I got to get going. It's been a tough day. What? Let's hear the motor run. It will start up and rev, but it doesn't make any power. It's disappointing to first of all, to have a broken motor that we're really excited about putting up, and to know that now you think, to think that you can actually start it and make it run, and you want to do that, and then it's bad, and then you go over to the wrecking yard and have somebody, and I had somebody pull it out because we had to take this other motor off and take a broken Hemi off, and so we get the other motor, I go over and pick that up and bring it back, and we get it up, and you're excited about this new one because it was even in a crashed car. So I thought, well, it's in a crashed car. It's got to be a good running motor. Man, and then you take the head off and think, okay, I'm gonna cure this problem. I'm gonna be a hero, and then you're back down to zero. It's a tough deal. How will you be controlling your Big Bang 3800? What system? This has a Holly on it right now. $1.25 minutes. A really good L67 in my Impala. Is it an Impala SS or a Monty? I like those too. Okay, guys, I got to get going. Lots more to do. I'm actually filming an episode of Engine Masters tomorrow with the guys, which will be awesome. lots of cool stuff. I was hoping that this was going to work out. Fingers crossed. I have another plan. I'm going to try to execute it during this next week and get this thing running so it'll all work out just fine. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Do 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 do.